So you know that game on Whose Line Is It Anyway, where they are all doing a scene and then somebody keeps saying change and then the scene has to change tones. Yeah, that was this movie. Hi, I'm the Rambling Director, and this is my review for Thor, Love and Thunder. I can't pretend that I am the biggest Marvel guy. I'm really not. One of my best friends went with me, and she is far more into Marvel than I am. I think she's seen almost every Marvel movie. Maybe all of them. And so I ran a lot of my thoughts by her before making this video, because I wanted to be sure that I wasn't wildly missing some things. But the tone of this movie is one of the strangest things I have ever seen in a film. So it starts off with Christian Bale. I know this is no spoilers. This is in like the first 2 minutes, okay? His daughter dies, and then he comes to this like weird, I guess out in the middle of the desert, but he comes to this like mirage thing that's real, and his god is there, and his god is like celebrating, and he's like, I'm the last of your disciples, and I've stayed true to you, and my daughter died in your name, and I'm here because, you promised us eternity. I'm just hoping in that promise, and so is that why you're celebrating? Because your last disciple has come home, and he goes, the god, I can't think of the god's name, but it doesn't matter. He goes, no, I am celebrating because I just vanquished one of my enemies who just so happen to have the only sword that can kill a god. And it's laying right there beside you for you to pick up at any time and slay me. Oh, and by the way, there is no eternal life. When you die, you're just dead, and that's it. Your daughter died in vain, and your faith is in vain, and screw you. Who cares about you? I don't care about you. I mean, you think because I'm your god, I care about you? And then, rationally, Christian Bale, the sword comes to him, it chooses him, or whatever nonsense, and then he kills this god, and is like, you are no god, and then he vows vengeance to go out and kill all of the gods. Then, Korg is telling a story, a very lighthearted, funny story about Thor, and how, basically recapping the other movies, and how he's come to this point. Now he's fit again. He's no longer the blobby little guy that we saw in Endgame. No. Now he is fit and sexy and ready to be marketed again. So then we start into some hilariously awkward, I think they're meant to be comedy routines, but like, they're not funny because they're funny. They're funny because they are so bad. They are so awkward that you just can't help but laugh at it. Like, there's this moment where Star-Lord is like, he looks at the Guardians and he's like, Thor, I know you're lost, but if you just look into the eyes of the people you love, that will remind you. And then Thor, from the corner of the screen, like into Star-Lord's vision, goes, like he's trying to insert himself as one of the people that Star-Lord loves, and Star-Lord is an ass about it, and doesn't look at Thor, and for some reason the color contrast is turned up so hilariously bright on Thor that his eyes look like blue raspberry suckers, and then in the next shot, totally normal exposure again. Now that's the sort of thing I don't normally point out in like a film that was independently made. I mean, I make independent films, and I struggle with things like that all the time, and that's fine. On $100 million or whatever it is they give these Marvel movies now, there's just no reason for that. And good gracious, I was just shocked by the tone, because you think this is going to be this brooding, serious, like the Batman or something, and then whiplash you into, and don't give me that, well, it's a Marvel movie. No, I have seen Marvel movies, okay, and they have a sense of humor. This was ridiculous, okay? The tone shift was just hilarious. I mean, oh man, it's just bad. Certain things were kind of nice. It was nice to see Darcy back, but for everything that was kind of cool about it and nice about that, they continued on the road that they have been on for years of Flanderizing Thor, so that he barely resembles the character that we met in the first film. And even the character that Thor has been in the early Avengers movies, he just had more decorum than that. And it just seems like he's become just a big, my friend said, a big golden retriever. And I think that's actually pretty accurate. He's just kind of a big, dumb golden retriever. And I don't think that was the character that we got initially. Christian Bale has to be one of the worst Marvel villains. I'll just go out and say it. I'm sure there will be a ton of people who will be like, oh, but he's so dark and broody, and that makes him good. You have your opinion, I'll have mine. Totally cool with us disagreeing. I did not like this villain. I thought he was one of the worst villains I've ever seen. His motivation is stupid, and he is stupid. But I'll get into that in just a minute. I don't want to put any spoilers in the first part of this. So, as you might expect, Lady Thor is introduced in this. Jane comes back, and Jane is dying of cancer, and she goes to the broken pieces of Mjolnir, and Mjolnir puts itself back together, and she becomes Lady Thor. Now, you might question why did Mjolnir do that for Jane and not for Thor? It's never addressed. The hammer... Okay, the hammer's in pieces on a piece of grass that is in an enclosed bubble. And they're talking about it. It has a very Superman 4 sort of setup where it's like, yes, the hair of Superman that can hold 10,000 pounds. And you're like, how did they get it in that position? How did they snip it off his head? How did they come into possession of this? Anyway, and me and my friend, we're watching this, and in the movie, she just leans over and goes, how did they do that? Could they pick up the ground and Mjolnir just move with the ground? Can you pick up Mjolnir if you move the ground underneath it? And I was like, well, or did they just get Thor to come down and just specifically to pick up all the pieces? And there's this terrible line. It's towards the end, but this isn't a spoiler, I'll just tell you. Where Christian Bale calls her Lady Thor, and she goes, for one thing, my name's not Lady Thor, my name's Mighty Thor. And I'm like, okay, no, the Mighty Thor is that long-haired guy over there. You're Lady Thor. Why don't you just embrace the title? It's awesome. Lady Thor is a friggin' awesome name. The weapons getting jealous thing, that just came out of nowhere. And understand me, all of these criticisms that I'm giving are strengths of the movie because the movie is so dumb and so ridiculous that it's entertaining. I won't say it's so bad it's good. I think it's a little too smart for that. I think a lot of it was intentional. But this is probably the first Marvel movie that I've seen that was like a screwball comedy. I know Guardians of the Galaxy was a comedy. I get that. That's fine, but this was like a screwball comedy. I don't think any of this was meant to be taken seriously. It's getting to the point where I don't really know why certain things couldn't have happened earlier. Like there's a point where Thor gives his power to a bunch of other people. So they have the power of Thor for 20 minutes. Okay. Why didn't he do that during Endgame? Why didn't he give all the other superheroes his power and make them all superheroes? I would love if somebody could explain to me why he didn't do that before if he had the power to do that. Again, I'll just say the tonal shifts were just magnificently stupid. I mean, it would go from Greek tragedy, literally, from 1 minute to, smiling and winking at the camera. They almost do everything except just go to the audience. I mean, it is just, it's over the top. Even for, I know Marvel, it's tongue-in-cheek, but this is over the top for a Marvel movie. This is like getting into some Deadpool territory. Russell Crowe plays Zeus in this, and he's fantastic. He's by far, I think, the best part of the movie. And the reason I say I think this movie is just out and out a screwball comedy, I don't think you're meant to take this movie seriously, is because any movie that has Russell Crowe walk down a flight of stairs while holding his skirt out and walking down the stairs like a pretty princess is not asking you to take anything else in this film seriously. My biggest criticism, as far as Christian Bale goes, like I said, he's one of the worst villains I've ever seen. And We're going to get into some spoilers here. His motivation is the worst motivation. I mean, like, just one of the worst motivations I have ever seen in a film. Because his daughter dies for his god, and his god turns out to be a sham. Well, not really. His god is a god, so he's not really a sham. But his god is not an honest god and doesn't keep his promises. So he comes to the conclusion, I must go and kill all the gods. And then, it's never explained how he knows about this, but he just knows about this thing called eternity, which, you know, if you know anything about the Marvel comics, is probably not, you know, nothing new to you. And he goes out, he goes to eternity, and he says, I'm going to get to eternity so that I can make the wish. The first person who gets to eternity can make a wish, and it will be granted. When you first hear about this idea, you have two thoughts in mind. Why doesn't he wish for his daughter to be alive again and stop killing people? Or why doesn't he just wish his daughter never died? And yeah, he gets to eternity, and he's ready to make the wish that all the gods would not exist anymore. They would all be dead. And Thor has to give him this My Little Pony friendship is magic speech to convince him that love is really what he needs and what he wants, and that he should wish for his daughter not to be dead. Now, I know they say when the sword is destroyed, he will die too, but it doesn't happen instantly. In fact, he lives for like 10 or 15 minutes later, and in terms of audience time, it's like 10 minutes. But it feels long. And Thor convinces him, and he's like, what kind of father would I be if I didn't wish the gods didn't exist? And then Thor's like, you should wish for her to come back. And he goes, I'm dying. And I laughed out loud. I couldn't take it. It was so... He clearly did not care that he was dying. And again, why didn't he just wish that his daughter never died? But no, he wishes his daughter was alive again, just so his daughter could lose her father and presumably have the same bitter feelings that he did. Stupid motivation. Stupid villain. What a dumb villain. And why is he going around murdering the lower tier gods to get... it doesn't get him closer to eternity. Everything that gets him to eternity is the fact that he has that sword. So what was with killing the gods to begin with? Why didn't he just go straight to eternity? And then Thor would have never found out his plan, and he never would have been stopped. Oh gosh, it's really silly. There are some really funny jokes in the film, like the god of dumplings, who is just like a little dumpling with an anime face. That's pretty funny. Some honorable mentions go to the fact that when Thor weaponizes these people, it's children. It's a bunch of children that he gives the power of Thor, and so a bunch of kids are the ones that take on the armies of evil. And when you're watching it, and they're like using stuffed bunnies as weapons, you're just sitting there thinking like, okay, listen, I get that there's Marvel is very tongue-in-cheek. Okay, don't say, oh, you just don't get Marvel. I totally get it. Okay, I have a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor. This is not comic relief. This is the whole movie is like this. You're not meant to take this seriously. I mean, this is just an out-and-out comedy. Even when Jane dies at the end, I'm in spoilers, so I can say Jane dies, and when she dies, I felt nothing. I thought it was just funny. Like, the whole thing was just funny. I wasn't sad that she was dying. There were two women a couple seats down from me, and they were... and I'm like, you cannot be invested enough in this movie to be crying over it. Surely you cannot. I know her character in the past, but her character in the past was completely different than the character we see in this film. Let me consult my notes for a minute. A couple honorable mentions. The fact that Korg is destroyed except for his face, and he has this joke where he's like, it turns out the only part of my race that's actually alive is our mouths. Go figure. That was pretty funny. The screaming goats that Thor gets awarded with for saving this country, and then, I mean, they serve a little bit of purpose, but mostly they're just kept around to be random humor, like something out of The Office, if The Office had superpowers. And I will also give an honorable mention for the creativity of having the shadow monsters be giant crabs. That was pretty cool. Well, there was a couple other animals in there, but I did notice some giant crabs, and that was pretty pretty cool. That was awesome. Again, just to reiterate, that opening and Christian Bale's character are probably the only parts of the film where I was like, that is just hilariously bad. And it's like they try to do this nihilism thing where they're like, there is no eternity, there is no life after this. And then even Thor goes along with that theme, where so it seems like the theme of the movie is like, live for the moment, don't care about the gods, they don't, it doesn't matter, morality doesn't matter, just live for today. Oh, except for the bad guy, his morals are wrong, so don't do like him, except he's right about everything. So the theme was very confused, and then at the end, Jane ends up going to Valhalla, which makes you think, wait a minute, Christian Bale, his whole motivation was because there was no afterlife and his daughter died and went to oblivion, and now you're telling me there is an afterlife. So what was with his character? You're living in a world, in a universe where not only do aliens exist, but every conceivable religion is correct at the same time. Theoretically, Captain America should go to Christian heaven, and Thor should go to Valhalla, and those two things just don't conflict in this universe. I have no problem if you want to make a universe like that in your movie, but you can't have a universe where afterlives and gods and goddesses are taken for granted, and then have one guy just go on this nihilistic rampage and go, there is no heaven and hell, so my daughter died for nothing, I must kill all the gods, the ones who are in charge in making heaven and hell happen. Oh wait, this is a really confused plan, and oh yeah, that guy who's been kind of dumb the rest of the movie just pointed out an obvious plot hole that I could have just wished for my daughter to be back with me. Now, oh no, I'm dying, and now I could have just wished her to, never have died, and then I wouldn't be dying, but, derpy-der. I mean, if you're asking me as if it was a good movie, no, it's one of the worst Marvel movies ever. D plus, maybe? But if you're asking me to grade it on my entertainment value, it's the same as watching The Happening or The Room, except on a higher budget, and maybe they were aware they were making something this goofy and stupid. But that's a big maybe. So if you're asking me to grade it based on my enjoyment, then yeah, solid A minus. Just because it's like watching a movie that was made to be watched while you were doing pot. Like, if you're not smoking something, this movie's not gonna make a lot of sense to you. And God bless it, I loved it. But is it a bad movie? Yeah, it's pretty bad. It's pretty dumb. Take that for what it's worth. If that speaks to you, maybe that'll tell you a little bit about whether or not you would like this film. Technical level, D. Entertainment level, A. Solid A. So that was all I got for this. Man, what a weird film. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.